the agenda for 9th, 14th August 2018.
I'll second it. Kurt Stevens.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is approval of the minutes for July the 24th, 2018, the regular council meeting.
I have, on this, on number 7, public comment, and there was quite a bit of comment on that, and I was wondering if we could get at least a bullet point of what is said and who says it. Most city councils, you have to sign a thing if you're going to talk, that way you know who's talking. But, we don't even have any record in our recordings of what was said during the public comments. And I was wondering if we could have that on there.
Whatever was discussed then.
Well, just a bullet point, yeah, just so we'll know, because like we talked about what the tower and different things like that. And that way when we're flipping back through and looking, at least it's on there.
Manny, can you do that?
Yeah, just a bullet point in the name of the primary person.
Can do.
Okay. That's all I have on there.
Do I have a motion for,
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 24th, 2018.
I'll second that, guy.
all in favor? Next is departmental reports, court reports, library reports, vehicle mileage report, and also you have a report for the senior citizens.
On the court report, I was wondering if we could get, if it's not too much trouble, it may be too difficult, but a date of either the citation or the adjudication on the court report. I know this is for the whole month, but I'm just curious about,
A date?
yeah, that way we can see any kind of trends, like first of the month or the weekend versus the week or Wednesday, and kind of see when our traffic issue, is that something that we can just, is that easy to add? Whoever's doing that?
She's not here. But John, can you get Judith to kind of add a date to this report that she sends?
I probably could, yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter, but I don't know if the citation date, which is really kind of for the things I'm looking at, would help me better really than an adjudication.
Okay.
Because you may get it and may extend it or continue it or whatever, but what I'm trying to do is build a pattern of when is our highest traffic violation counts and things like that.
Okay.
So if it's easy, citation date would be what I'd like.
Just a date, fine.
Yeah, just a
Okay.
date. That. And on, if anybody have anything else on that? And then on the library report, I was just wondering, who is signing off on this? Who's in charge of this?
As far as I know, Pam's still with.
Well, Crystal has done the last 2 or 3. And you'll notice, I think her name's up at the top, or is it both of ours still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So mainly what I'm looking for is who's going to be, because I was thinking you were transitioning off and she was coming in. Is that
Right.
happening?
Well, I'm training her. She's not completely the director
okay.
yet until Marilyn and I sit down and have a talk. I'm trying to get her through all these first things. She's just finished the annual report and she's taken these reports over. But I'm staying as the clerk, so if you're wanting me gone, it's not happening.
But I was just, what I was looking for is just someone who's going to be liable or responsible for the data in that report, whether it's you or her. That
We
way.
both collect it, but what we do is all the data goes on our calendar. And in our calendar, we sit down and break the statistics out, and we do this every month. We are starting tomorrow with our automating program. So the look of the report may change once we get fully automated, but we start our first step tomorrow.
Okay. So I just want someone who is signing off on that as the point, as the supervisor or someone responsible for that information.
Okay. Well,
One or the other, doesn't matter.
right now, she's responsible for that report.
Okay.
And she kind of lets me glance at it and then she brings it over.
Okay.
Is there a problem with the report?
No, it's just a housekeeping, it keeps it on focus, that way when you look back, say, 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
we can see who was responsible for that data. As the finances change and things are changing for the library funding, that could be relevant into how that data was collected. It's just really more of a housekeeping point of order.
Well, her name's at the top, but we both are doing the reporting of
Right.
it. But right now, she's compiling the
So
report.
this is her report.
Mhm. But it's for the whole library because we
Even if
both
you just
collect it.
initial it, it's just a responsibility thing. Even if you or her, whoever does it, that way I don't have to, you know, if you're gone or she's gone or changes, that way.
Well, we would change the name at the top of the report if one of us if we're both gone. Is her name not at the top of the report?
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of the sign off there, is what
So
we were
both of
thinking.
you.
Right now, because I'm reviewing her work, yeah. And when in a couple of months, she'll be the director, and then my name will go off of it.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's good enough.
Okay?
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the board reports then?
I think we've got one more thing. No. No, does anybody have anything else?
I don't.
I'll make a motion that we accept the department reports, the court report, library report, vehicle mileage report for municipal utility.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is financial reports.
This is our off time, we don't really have any financial statements or anything else. The auditor comes next Monday. Initially, a long time ago, he said he'd be happy to attend the council meeting, but I don't think he's gonna be here for one. He's expected to be here 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. His list of items that he required was so short, we did it 2 or 3 months ago in a half a day. It was delightful. So I don't know, exactly what's gonna happen with that, but we're looking forward to meeting him, and we'll have lots of stuff next time.
Okay. Next is public comment. Yes?
Hello, my name is Nick Maxwell, and for the public, I'm a resident of Lee County, and today the Eddie Lee Energy Alliance Vice Chairman John Heaton is here to present a very, in my opinion, one-sided view of this project. I would advocate that you object to this resolution put forward today. I think there's a lot of problems with this project, specifically with the Eddie Lee Energy Alliance, which is the foundation. I've had several sunshine issues come to my attention, and this public body that's tax funded has lost years of my minutes, your minutes. The stewardship has not been to the level that I feel comfortable with. And so I would take my 2 minutes to just recommend that you vote no on this resolution today. Thank you.
I have some questions on that. Do you have any scientific information or anything technical about that project, or are you more in objecting to it on a process basis?
I do object on a process basis. I believe there's legalities and sunshine laws in our state that were violated to get to this point.
Okay, but as far as the actual physics of it and the actual storage, you don't really object to that? I mean, you see that as safe and...
It's my opinion that there is a better solution, that until a permanent storage facility is found, that it should not be moved from the locations it's at, that hardened on-site storage should be what is sought and approved nationwide.
Do you have an opinion as to why you're having difficulty with the FOIA or sunshine information?
A lot of my issues have more to do with open meetings violations that happened in the past. Things that had to do with approving resolutions that would have enabled contracts to be signed to get to this point, which as well, the taxpayers paid a pretty good chunk of money to renew the bylaws of this organization in 2014. They've existed since 2006. The purpose became somewhat frustrated, and so they needed to redefine their organization. They did so in 2014, and part of the redefining of the bylaws included a stipulation that all contracts were to be signed by 2 officers of the ELEA Energy Alliance. And what I found is that the contracts that they have signed have been signed by 1 officer. It's procedural errors like this. But not only that, you've got meetings in the past where public notice wasn't given correctly.
Okay.
There were resolutions on the resolutions that weren't passed at the correct times. And in order for us to be most appropriately represented by our elected officials and our public bodies, those laws have to be not only honored, but I believe enforced when they're violated.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has anything? Okay, well, let's go ahead and go on with Holtec's presentation. We're ready for you guys.
Let me begin if I can. Pardon me, I don't know where to stand here, but I don't mean to put my back to you, but I need to address the council. Anyway, my name is John Heaton, and I'm the vice chairman of the ELEA Energy Alliance. And just to give you a little background on that, we were formed in 2006, and at that time, the people that formed it, which were, or the groups that formed it were the City of Carlsbad, Eddy County, Lee County, and Hobbs. So the ELEA Energy Alliance was formed through a joint powers agreement between those 4 entities, and they have been the supporting entities throughout the process. And so we originally began because of this global nuclear energy partnership that was put forth by the Department of Energy. And so we went out, we bought 1,000 acres of land to participate in that. And then the GNET project subsequently went by the wayside. And as a consequence, we were dormant for a number of years. And then when the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future began, one of their centerpiece recommendations was going to be consolidated interim storage. And that's when we recognized that we had a well-characterized site that was had all the properties of being an excellent site for the consolidated interim storage facility. So at that time, we then began to investigate. We brought in the majors that were doing interim storage in the country, and the board itself, once it began to learn about it, began to travel out to see some of the manufacturing facilities as well as some of the storage systems around the country. And then we spent some time talking to the national labs, to DOE, to a variety of experts in the area to try to understand the safety of the project. And we concluded, after a good deal of study, that it was a very, very safe project and that we wanted to move forward. So with that, we put out an RFP, and Holtec was the clear winner of that. They were head and shoulders above anybody. They have a great organization. It's well-financed. They have a great DMB rating. They have some 60% of all the storage in the United States, and they're an American company, but they also have storage around the world, and they're working on nuclear projects in the back end of the fuel cycle around the world. So they do a lot of research. They're very technically oriented, and they have some, I don't think, more than 120 patents in the company. The CEO of the company himself, I think, has around 80 patents. And so they are very research oriented, and we thought that that was also going to be good for our area, eventually bringing research projects in that would hire various researchers to participate. So I just wanted to give you just a brief overview of who we are and who we've been. And then I want to turn it over to Joy Russell. Joy is the communications coordinator for Holtec, and she's a West Point graduate and has a master's degree in nuclear engineering, and very well versed, and has another number of other credentials that have taken me a long time to quote. So I'll stop at that and turn it over to Joy. Joy, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, council members. And I also apologize for having my, not the best side of me spoke to all of you. Mayor and council members, John and I both have handouts that may help with some of the description of the material that I wanted to talk about this evening. But first, I want to thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to come here and speak with you. If it's okay, we'll go through, and then John and I are happy to answer any questions, and if we cannot answer those, then we'll obviously get back to you with any responses. What I would like to talk about is what is the issue. John has highlighted it. I would like to talk to you about what nuclear fuel is. Georges, I have forgotten my fuel pellet. And also a bit about who Holtec is, because we are unknown to this area. We'd like to go over that. And then our views on consolidated interim storage, and also what the technology is that we're proposing to deploy here in southeast New Mexico. So, actually I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
It'll be easier based on. So the issue, as John has talked about, is this issue with the storage of spent nuclear fuel. And as John mentioned, the Blue Ribbon Commission has, first let me start back a little bit further. The Department of Energy has the ultimate obligation for final disposition of spent nuclear fuel. And that is mandated by law, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982. Because if you remember, perhaps you probably don't remember because you weren't born yet, but in 1976, we used to reprocess spent nuclear fuel, and we stopped the reprocessing process. So the utilities have spent nuclear fuel that is at the nuclear plants. And in order for the nuclear plants to continue to operate, they safely store this nuclear fuel in what we call dry storage. And the
I'm listening, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, you're fine, you're fine, Counselor. So, this slide, that's number 4, which is at the bottom of page 2, shows you the locations of these storage sites around the country. This is just in the United States. There are approximately 73 sites, and as John said, my company, Holtec International, we provide the spent fuel storage systems for over 50%, around 60% of the plants that currently use on-site spent fuel storage. So it'll be easier to understand when I provide a little information about what spent nuclear fuel is. So if you look on page 3, the top, which is slide 5, spent nuclear fuel, unfortunately the nuclear industry uses this terminology of fuel, because when you think of fuel, you think of the liquid petrol that you put in your car, or the petrol that we put into an airplane. You think of the liquid. Nuclear fuel is not a liquid. Nuclear fuel is actually, as the pellet shows you, it starts off as a pellet, and it's called a fuel pellet. It's about the size of your thumb, and we'll pass one of these around. And it's a solid ceramic, and this solid ceramic pellet is then stacked inside of a steel tube. And the tube is welded at both the top and the bottom. So it completely houses this pellet. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass that around so you, it's just a dummy pellet. It's a model. And on that card, it also shows you an indication of how much energy is produced by that pellet in relation to other methods of producing energy. So it shows you in there. So that one pellet produces the same amount of energy as 3 barrels of oil, and so on. So there's a lot of information on that particular card. So these fuel rods, now we've taken the pellets and we put them into the rods, and now we put them into an array, which is about 10 rods by 10 rods. It's now a square, and that's called a fuel assembly. And you can see in this photograph on slide number 5, that is inside of a nuclear power plant, and it's called a spent fuel pool, and that's a fuel assembly that you see being raised out of that spent fuel pool there. It's still underwater, but that fuel assembly is being removed so that you can get an idea of what this is that we're speaking of. So spent nuclear fuel is a solid material, and when we put it into dry storage, we actually put it into a canister, and we then take out all the water, and it's dry storage. And we store it at these nuclear plants. And the project involves taking that canister, that seal-welded canister that's got those fuel assemblies, and bring that to New Mexico on a rail car. John's going to talk a lot more about the actual transportation process of that as soon as I finish my remarks. The next slide, which is slide number 6, is who is Holtec. So, I personally have been at Holtec for over 21 years. When I started at the company, there were around 30 of us, so I'm proud to say that I helped grow the company into what it is today. I was one of the original engineers that helped design our dry storage system. I performed analytical work. I defended the dry storage system to the NRC, which is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the body, the federal body that regulates all radioactive material, including spent nuclear fuel. And I'm proud to have been part of this organization. We're fundamentally, as John said, a technology organization. Our main mission is to provide our clients, which are nuclear utilities, with innovative solutions to any situation that they have at their plant. And our preference is to do so in a manner that prevents them from having to make any modifications to their plant. We have the in-house capability with all of our resources to design and engineer a piece of equipment. If it needs to be licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, we can do that as well. We have a licensing group. We already hold 13 licenses with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for our equipment, our dry storage of spent fuel equipment. We manufacture, and this is probably what I'm the most proud of, we have 3 manufacturing facilities in the United States. We have 1.3 million square feet of manufacturing space. We have a factory in Ohio, we have a factory in Pittsburgh, and our newest factory is located in Camden, New Jersey. We just invested $360 million in the city of Camden to build a state-of-the-art facility, and we manufacture our equipment. All of our equipment is manufactured in the United States, and then we export it. And to the best of our abilities, we also source all of our materials domestically as well. We produce massive amounts of equipment with stainless steel and carbon steel. The state-of-the-art factory. We have our dry storage clients around the globe total 105 nuclear power plants. There's only 440 plants in the world, and so if you look at the world, we have about 1/4 of the utilities in the world use our dry storage system. And we've safely deployed over 1,200 of our spent fuel storage systems around the world. So 59 sites domestically and 46 internationally use our dry storage system. So if you turn to the next page, slide number 7 at the top of the page, mantra, our view on consolidated interim storage, we can summarize into 4 words: safe, secure, retrievable, and temporary. By safety, what we mean is that we have, similar to not speeding through your town, because it's the safe thing to do, not because you want to avoid getting a ticket, but it's the right thing. Our dry spent fuel storage systems are engineered to be safe. We provide the utmost amount of, the absolute most shielding we can possibly provide. The materials, some of them we actually make in our own factory in Ohio, the neutron absorber and other materials. But just inherently, we make this system as safe as possible so that it minimizes the dose to any people in the area and it maximizes the safety. So we design our equipment so that it minimizes the lifts of heavy, these are very heavy loads. We minimize the number of evolutions of having to lift things, be it in our factory when we manufacture, or in the field when our equipment is being deployed. Safety is utmost importance to us. When it comes to security of spent nuclear fuel, we ensure that the design of our system and the design of our facilities where we store the spent nuclear fuel has the highest level of safety standards that are possible. Safety of spent nuclear fuel is governed by the federal government in the Code of Federal Regulations. So of course we meet those regulations, but the security is important to make sure that no bad guys get to it. And if that guy were to get to it for, in some unknown reason, that they cannot do anything to that spent nuclear fuel. Retrievable. This is a retrievable system. That canister that is used to hold the spent nuclear fuel that brings it from the power plants to New Mexico is the same canister that will be used to take it out of New Mexico. Which brings me to my 4th bullet, which is temporary. This is not in any way intended to be a permanent or final resting place for the spent nuclear fuel. The federal government has the obligation under the Nuclear Waste Policy Act to take final disposition of this material. By law, they have to, and there is an enormous fund for them to do so. And we're pushing the federal government. We encourage everyone here, mayor, council members, all of us need to push the federal government to fulfill their obligation. Holtec in no way sees this as a final place for the storage of the spent nuclear fuel. We have a commitment to you and to the rest of the United States to make the government fulfill their obligation to take this material to its final location. Then, if we could move over to the next slide, the local support that we've garnered is very clear. The ELEA Energy Alliance has invited us to be part of this project, and we're very, very delighted to be part of this project. We have received then obviously letters from the cities of Carlsbad and the counties and Hobbs, and letters from the counties of Eddy and Lee. But we've also received letters of support from the governor, and we've had memorial letters written from the House and the Senate of New Mexico. And most recently, we've had a resolution signed in favor of the project by the New Mexico State Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Committee. So we do have strong support, and we look forward to your support once you're comfortable with the safety and security of the project. So the next slide down at the bottom there, I hope will demonstrate to you the safety and security of the storage of spent nuclear fuel. It's a little bit hard to see. I usually have this blown up a little bit more, but let me just start at the very bottom. That's a 3-foot reinforced concrete pad, and then it then holds a silo that's carbon steel. It's a carbon steel shell that's rolled, and that carbon shell is about 20 feet high. And how we manufacture this, and John's going to actually have some more photos within his presentation, we backfill around each of those silos with additional concrete. We bring that up to the top of those silos, And then on top of that, we put another 3-foot thick concrete reinforced pad. So a lot of concrete. And all that concrete will be sourced down here in southeastern Mexico. Each one of those silos holds one canister containing the spent nuclear fuel. Again, that autonomous canister that comes from the nuclear plant sites by rail will be placed in one of those silos. And on top of that silo then, we'll place a 25,000-pound lid that's made out of concrete and steel that provides protection. So from a safety perspective, this is a monolith of concrete that surrounds a retrievable canister. It is licensed and designed to handle seismic events up to the greatest that are encountered in the United States, including California. This system is actually deployed in California. I will on the coastline. I'll show you photos of that in a moment. It's designed so that the canister is below grade, so there's no target for a missile from a tornado, from a launched missile from a bad guy, from an aircraft crash. It's impossible to crash an aircraft straight down into this facility. It's protected that well. So from a safety perspective, it provides the utmost safety of the stored spent nuclear fuel by placing it below grade. And also from a safety perspective, what we're doing is we're protecting the public, but we're also protecting that spent nuclear fuel. It has to maintain its temperature. And in that regard, this is a completely passive system. It just sits there. The cooling of it is done just by natural air. It doesn't need any water. It doesn't need any electricity except to power the lights and the intrusion detection systems, which I'll show you in the next slide. It just sits there. It's a completely passive system. The next slide actually demonstrates what the site will look like. As John mentioned, there's 1,000 acres, and we will use approximately 500 of that. And the site will be surrounded by the vehicle barriers first. Then as you move in closer to the spent nuclear fuel, there's a double fence that meets the requirements of the Code of Federal Regulations, which is 8 feet high, and it has the concertina wire, my military jargon here, the razor wire at the top. It also has to have closed circuit television. It has to have other intrusion detection systems, and it also has guards with guns, and there'll be stands so that the guards will be raised up high. There are specific scenarios that are within the Code of Federal Regulations which we must demonstrate that we are able to guard against. And it needs a safeguards clearance for that. So my coworkers, I do not have a safeguards clearance any longer, but my coworkers do. And they work closely with the NRC to demonstrate that this site does indeed meet all of those security requirements. Now, our license application will ultimately has the environmental footprint for 10,000 canisters, but we've asked for an approval in the first phase of 500 canisters. So the facility will be built in specific phases, and the first phase would be built with 500 canisters. Again, the metal part of that we look to source down here. We typically would make those either in Pittsburgh or in Ohio, but it would make more sense to manufacture some of these components down in this area. The next slide talks through the license timeline. So slide number 12 at the bottom of page 6. We submitted our license to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission back in March of 2017, and in March of 2018, the NRC wrote a letter to us that said, it's called an acceptance letter, and in that acceptance letter it said that there is enough information for them now to begin their technical review. But it also started some other clockworks, such as the environmental impact review, which that is the public meetings that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had here in May. They had them in Carlsbad, Hobbs, Gallup, in Albuquerque, and then there was one by phone. The public comment period on that environmental report closed on July 30th. The NRC, in the acceptance letter in March, indicated, or actually told us in that letter, that we will receive a request for additional information by the end of August. So we anticipate receiving that within the next week or two. It's getting to be the end of August. And then the NRC next summer will issue a draft environmental impact statement and safety evaluation report, and then they will have additional public meetings following their issuance of that. The NRC in their letter of March 2018 stated that provided Holtec submits proper responses, quality responses to the request for additional information in a timely manner, that the license to operate and construct the facility could be granted in July of 2020. Then moving to the next slide, this is the potential construction timeline. So at this point, Holtec has funded the licensing process, and we have expended about $10 million of Holtec money. As John said, we're a big research and development company. We're using our research and development funds to fund the licensing process for this. We anticipate that to move through the final process of licensing, we'll expend between $24 and $25 million. On the construction side, we want to move forward and construct, but the Department of Energy is who we're looking for to fund to pay for the construction of the site. If we start construction in 2020 when we receive the license, then we could potentially accept the first shipment in 2023. I want to draw your attention to the photograph here on this page on slide 13, on page 7. That's one of my coworkers. He's standing in front of one of these same facilities at a nuclear plant in Missouri called Callaway Nuclear Plant. And you can see by my coworker, the low profile of this system. When we were driving here, we were in Lovington all day and then drove here, and I passed 2 wind farms on the way here. And it was interesting to me because the wind farms are very obvious. Whereas you look at this is going to be completely below grade, and you can see that that's just the vent that's sticking out at the top there. It's about 2.5 feet high, and my coworker, and I'm the one taking the picture, we're standing right next to it. There's spent nuclear fuel stored there. So a couple things I want to point out. That the radiation coming from those is essentially zero where my coworker's standing. We did not need any dosimetry, no radiation measuring devices where we're standing. And the low profile of it, again, there's no target here. And these things just sit in the ground. So this is at Callaway. And then the next slide where it says questions at the top. This is the San Onofre nuclear plant, located right on the coastline in just north of San Diego. And you can again see, unfortunately it's a little small, but there's some individuals wearing white Tyvek suits, mostly because they're actually doing some construction work here, not because of the radiation. There's no spent fuel in here yet. This is during a construction, but that's the height of the lid. Again, it shows you that you can stand at one side of the facility and look completely across. From a security perspective, that's awesome. That means that there's no place for these any bad guys to hide. First I showed you that there's no way that a bad guy can get there, and then the next thing I show you is that there's no place for anyone to hide. So with that, I'm going to step aside and allow John to come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for the opportunity to go over this with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the transportation system, and then show you some pictures of how the facility itself is constructed, and then go over some of the benefits that we see happening to Lee County, Eddy County, and for economic development purposes. So if you look at the bottom of the first page, there are a couple of maps there. The one on the left shows you where the routes are that would be going to the WCS, the Waste Control Specialist project, which is a competitor that have an application in as well. And it is 2 miles across the border to Eunice. It is 37 miles to Andrews, which is a long way off to respond. And it's also about 15, 16 miles from Hobbs and the same distance to Jowl. So the point here is to show you that if that's the rail route, New Mexico has all the responsibility for that rail route. It ultimately goes to waste control specialists, and New Mexico does all the response and has none of the benefits. The other route, if you look to the slide or the right-hand side, you can see the blue that takes you down from Clovis to our site. And so there's no connection between either one of those rail transport systems. So if we go to the next page, I want to reinforce again what are the 4 layers of containment, the 4 layers of protection. And the first is, as Joy pointed out just a minute ago, is the ceramic pellet. The uranium is actually enclosed and the fission materials are enclosed within that ceramic pellet. Then secondly, it goes into a metal fuel rod, and those are sealed on each end, and so that forms the second layer of containment. And then they're put into an assembly, and then if you look at the canister, you can see the honeycomb shape in the canister. Each one of those fuel assemblies would go into one of those honeycomb cavities. This canister then is welded shut, and the welding is just above the surface of the water in the fuel pool that she showed you. But then all the water that's in that is vacuumed out, and it's replaced with helium. And as you're well aware, helium is an inert gas, and so it cuts down on the corrosion within the facility. It's also a good dissipator of heat. So it moves the heat from the inside of the canister to the outside of the canister. So it performs a couple of really important physics functions and chemistry functions. Then what happens, it will go into a transport cask. And so the canister is the third layer, and then the transport cask is the actual fourth layer of protection. That transport cask is very, very robust. This thing weighs about 250,000 pounds. It has a 15-inch layer of steel and lead to protect the public and any workers that may be around. It's virtually indestructible. Then from the transport cask, it's then transferred into the silos that were explained by Joy secondly. So that's sort of the process. I want to emphasize to you that there are 4 layers of protection, and there are some other things I'll mention in a moment about the transportation system. But the bottom picture is a picture of the cask itself, and you can see that there are impact limiters on each end. And what the NRC does is they assume that this is going to be in the worst accident that they can think about. So they think about it running into a concrete abutment or another train, or they think about a piece of rail or metal sticking out that would hit the side of the cask and potentially puncture it. They think about the fact that next to it is going to be a rail car that's full of jet fuel, and it's going to catch fire, and it's going to burn this cask and they burn it at 1,500 degrees for 30 minutes. That's the time that they assume an emergency response crew is going to get there, and then they submerge it in 30 feet of water to make sure that it can tolerate the temperature changes, and also that it does not leak. So that's the test they go through, and it's made more or less to simulate what a terrible rail accident would actually, how it would actually occur. And the impact limiters on the end are to absorb forces if it should leave the rail car, so it would absorb the forces. And it is just an extremely extraordinary, robust cask. And the next slide on the next page you'll see is a rail car, and there are a lot of comments always being made that the rails won't, or that this is all too heavy for our rails. But what happens, if you can see the rail car, it has 12 axles on it. So the physics of it is that it distributes the weight across the rail so that it tolerates it. And by the way, a locomotive that will be pulling this weighs as much as one of these cars does. So in our rail system, they're going up and down the rail all day long between Carlsbad and Clovis. So it's, again, a very, very, very good system. So let me just comment a little bit on the slide below about the rail system and kind of how it works. I don't know whether you know it or not, but about 92 to 95% of all the rail in the United States is private. So the right-of-ways, the rail, the track, everything about it are owned by the rail companies, and they are responsible for maintenance, they're responsible for upkeep, they're responsible for how cars go up and down the track. And if you went into one of their bunkers where they actually manage the rail system in the United States, and the Class 1 rail carriers all have these bunkers, and they know where every train in the United States is. Each other's and others, it's like being in an airport system where they are bringing planes in and out, and how they manage all of that. And so they're very adept at where the cars are and what's going on. I'll never tell you there won't be an accident, but I can tell you that there won't be a release. The accidents happen, but this cask is so robust that getting a release out of those 4 layers, and especially with that internal pellet, that's a solid, it's just not going to leave that cask. So DOT, how it happens is DOE, or not DOE, but the NRC is responsible for licensing the cask, and this cask that Holtec will be using is their High Star 190 cask, and it has been licensed by the NRC. And again, it's the heaviest cask that the NRC has ever licensed, and the most robust that they have ever licensed. So the routes that a train will take, the Department of Transportation and the Federal Rail Administration get together along with NRC, and they make determinations about what the rail routes will be from any one of those sites that you saw on that map. They make that determination, and before the train ever leaves, there'll be a unit train, or a train that is limited to 7 to 10 cars. That will be the limit on the number of cars that are in that dedicated train. And then there will be the locomotive, a buffer car, then the 10 loaded cars, another buffer car, and then at the end will be a security car, which will be manned with guards and guns and security personnel. The train will be satellite tracked, but before it ever leaves, it will be tested by the DOT, the FRA. They'll test it for all the limits that it's supposed to be contained within, what the surface radiation levels are, all of those things get tested, and then they choose the best rail that it will go to its destination. So the way they control the physics of the forces is that they will limit the speed that this dedicated train can move. So if you think about the best rail in the country, trains can go up and down it at 75 miles an hour typically. But with this dedicated train, it will be limited to 50 miles an hour, and that all figures into the physics of whether that cask can be damaged or not. So the forces are all taken into consideration when they make those decisions. So on the best rail, they'll allow 50 miles an hour. When it gets to lesser class rail, like between Clovis and Carlsbad, it will most likely be reduced to 25 to 20 miles an hour. And when it gets out into the area where the potash business has always been, there's a lot of rail out there, it'll be probably slowed down to 10 to 15 miles an hour. And this is all to control the forces. So this is how they do all their modeling. and how they understand the physics. So if you go to the next page, just to give you a little bit of history again about transport, there have been over 1,300 spent fuel transports that have occurred in the United States without incident and without a release. There have been more than 850 naval fuel transports in the country, and those all culminate in Idaho, at the Idaho National Laboratory. And so those have all occurred without releases. There have been thousands of warheads that are transported from Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque to Pantex to be refurbished and then transported back to be sent out across the world wherever our nuclear arsenal is around the world. There have been, just to give you a local comparison, WIP has had more than 12,000 shipments, more than 14 million miles, which is like going to the moon and back. And the only incidences we've had are, we've had a couple of drunks run into the back of the truck, we've had some fender benders, but there's never been one of the containers leave the truck, and there's never been a breach of the container either. And it's the focus that people that are doing transportation have on the security and the safety of what they're doing. And that's, as an example, in WIP, we will, if you've ever had a moving violation, you cannot get a job there driving a truck. So that's kind of the standards that they use and exercise, and extraordinary amounts of training. So Sandia is in Albuquerque, does a lot of the cask integrity studies, and they do a lot of the modeling that goes on, and some of their, if you ever get a chance, it's pretty extraordinary to watch some of the modeling that they've done, and some of the accidents that they put some of these casks through. So the casks really are virtually indestructible. So let me get into the building of the facility itself real quickly. I want to show you 4 slides related to it. The first slide you see is the excavation process, and they'll excavate down, 25 or 30 feet, and then they put an aggregate floor down, and then they put that 3-foot reinforced concrete slab down on the bottom, and you can see that in the next picture. And then they put these silos on top of that 3-foot thick reinforced concrete slab, and you can see the height of the men there, thinking about them being about 6 foot tall, and how tall those silos are. And then after that, the bottom slide, on slide 10, you can see where they're pouring concrete between all of the silos and up onto the freeboard, the side, and they'll fill that up until it's 3 foot below the top of the silo. And then if you look at the next slide, you can see they then pour a 3-foot reinforced concrete slab on top of all of that concrete, and that this system is a virtual fortress. Penetrating it, getting anything in or out of it, the only way it gets in or out is out of the top of the silo. So it is very, very robust. As Joy said, airplanes can crash into it, rockets, and it withstands all of that kind of thing. And so it's pretty incredible, and that's one of the reasons that we thought this was the system that we wanted, and it was going to come here. We wanted the best in the world, and we think it is the best in the world. So just to get into some of the incentives, we have an arrangement with our agreement with Holtec that there will be, they will pay us a percentage of their gross revenue, not net, their gross, and it will come to the partners, and you're in Lee County, so you will participate in the benefits of that. And we think that at some point we need to probably put some money into roads and put it into the state transportation department, and with some limitations that those roads occur in southeast New Mexico. Lord knows we need them, right? And the overall capital expenditure will be about $2.4 billion. It's a huge capital expenditure that will be coming into our neighborhood. We expect that there will be about 250 well-paid jobs, average in the neighborhood of $70,000. I'm not sure that always matches the oil field. I think there will be probably more technical jobs, more career-oriented jobs in a lot of ways. So there'll be 100 construction jobs for about 10 years. The first, as Joy said, is a 500 unit facility, and then as demand occurs, those will be built out. And then we think then there'll be another 100 jobs, operational jobs that will be rad tech people, management folks, that kind of thing that will be on the site. So there will be activities that will have to occur, like maintenance of the rail car, maintenance of the transportation cast. Since it's a single focus point, it makes sense that that's where that occurs. So that will be happening there. And then the silo construction, these things are more than 7 feet in diameter, and then they're almost 20 feet tall. And so it makes no sense that they're going to be imported from someplace. They're going to need to be done in our area. So, and they're going to have a lot of them. And also there's a sleeve that goes inside, so we're hoping that that will be additional manufacturing. And we also expect some other spin-offs since this will be consolidated. We're expecting that there'll be a scientific community that's looking at aging, that's looking at the facility, looking at everything that's going on there. So there'll be some technical folks here, some scientific types. We also think that heat is a heck of a resource. You can figure out how to use it. And so there'll be a significant amount of heat that, you know, we talk about maybe boiling water. There's a lot of water production in the oil field, and nobody knows what to do with it. And so it's expensive to manage, but it'd be neat if we could boil it and come out with distilled water and provide the communities that need it, that water resource. So we think there are some things that if we put our heads to it, you all can help us with that as well. So that's what we think. We think it offers some future potential in a lot of ways if we all put our heads together and think about it. So just some final thoughts. There's going to be a facility, a consolidated storage, and whether it's in Texas at the WCS facility or whether it's our site, which is much better, it's rural, it's more stable, everything about it is a better site, and so it's going to be somewhere. But so it's kind of a question that comes up. Do you want it in Texas where it's 2 miles from Eunice, 15 miles from Hobbs, 15 miles from Jow, and Lee County is responsible for the emergency response activities for the rail that goes through New Mexico, that goes through Lee County, and also responsible for emergency response activities. Do we want it there and not have any benefits for New Mexico, or do we want it in New Mexico where we not only take care of ourselves, but we also we provide our own emergency response and we have all the benefits from it, all the jobs and the capital investment that's going to go on. So, you know, I just say to you that there's no involvement with the oil and gas industry. We're in the Secretary's potash, strategic potash zone, and now that there's horizontal drilling, drill islands are being located around in the potash area, so oil and gas can drill underneath the facility without any impact on it whatsoever. So there's no problems with it. So just to close, it's very benign. There are no pumps, as Joy said, no moving parts. It just gets cooler every day, and it's cooled by convection. The air that's closest to the canister rises, and it pulls cool air back down. And so it's just this constant movement of cooling that goes on. We think it's a great project for our 2 counties. And so we would then now be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, I was prepared for this because I've probably got 25 or 30, but I don't think this is the forum for it. Just a couple. I think you guys have presented a great technical presentation. No doubt the canisters, I mean, all that is tight, and the security, even though you're not gonna really lay all that out, but I have probably put 300 hours of research into this project myself, so I'm way down the road on this, and I do have a background in oil field explosives as well, and also a safety specialist with Oxford Petroleum. I'm semi-retired, but I do have some background in this, and there are some questions, and I think I almost, you know, these questions are just way too technical. One thing is you guys have to realize the majority of the people you're addressing have no clue about this last meeting when we talked about you people in here didn't know what ELEA was. So I guess in a general sense, real simply, is why do you seek, this resolution is so glowing. This resolution is so glowing. I've never seen anything like it. It shows that we've all studied this topic intimately and are almost experts at this, and that we give you our blessing on this, where I could ask 2 or 3 questions. I wonder if anybody in here could answer them about, you know, why did you change from C-150 to C-190? Because some of your literature showed that you were proceeding with the C-150 initially, and now, and I noticed it went to C-190, but what my point is, no one really even knows what that means in here.
I think Joy could probably answer that question.
Well, I think it's all valid, that's what I'm saying, what you're saying is right on, but like real questions that people that around here, this is a very small community, but like, you know, worst case scenario, which I don't think it is, I've been in the oil field, I see there's tremendous things, radioactivity everywhere, we bring it out of the ground, it's all processed. I think we do it safer. The thing that we get hit with, or I get hit with, is the apocalypse. And the apocalypse, I don't think can happen under your system. I've looked at it, but you know, it could. When you are talking to people, that's what they want to talk about. And when you talk about if there is the worst case scenario, the oil is you can't mine the oil anymore. It completely. I mean, there's metric tons of this. This is hot. All of it in the whole country comes here. But, and I know you're in a battle, you're in a national battle, and our signatures are going to be national. They're going to every congressman in the United States Congress. You know, if something goes bad or if something is discovered, then our names are on this forever. And if no one can live here for 2.4 million years, you know, it may hunt down my family, I don't know. But you guys really aren't, you're just doing a presentation, I get that. And I mean, you don't, you know, this is actually a domino. I guess what I would say to my other counselors in kind of response, but this is actually an opening for a nuclear footprint that's way larger than Holtec. That's the phase one. And then you're talking about, you know, advanced reactor facilities that marry into this that can use, like you're saying, other things. I don't know anybody in here knows about advanced or Gen 3 or Gen 4 nuclear reactor research, which is something that can marry into this, you know, and reactor development. So, I mean, I don't know why you need us, really, I guess. It's almost like we're just a little bitty group of what's so important about our resolution.
You know, every community and a resolution from any community is a really important step. And you know, beginning the understanding of the project, and I suppose at some time, if you didn't want to pass the resolution before you tonight, you could always reject it. But it's just important to have the people in the county, and on top of that, what's called the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board will convene a panel. I don't know when, but they will at some point. And not that the city has to be a participant in that, but just having somewhat of an educated voice that's there. There will be plenty of contentions brought by other people, And so that board goes through those contentions and makes decisions about whether they're valid or not. And the panel's made up of 2 technical people and a lawyer, and gotta have a lawyer in there.
Well, of course.
And so, at any rate, that's.
Well, it looks like your opposition is mainly emotional and not scientific. It has
There's
issue man the same
There's nothing
thing.
technical about
Right.
the opposition. It's always,
Scary.
what if this and what if that,
Right.
and scare tactics. And so I think.
And then that, I guess, would bring me, without going through all the technical stuff, because I was really ready to go. I thought we were gonna get after it, but, like I said, I think overall, your security and your.
Joy can answer them all.
containment- Yeah, but that's really moot here. We're not, it's a waste of time, but like, we have an EMS system that's struggling. We got, maybe $750,000 in EMS equipment sitting down there that can't take a heart attack victim to the hospital. Or if it does, it's barely or rarely. You can't depend on it. How does this project affect us to where we can have that training? I'm sure that the emergency services may include us, may not. We may be too far away. But how do we get benefit, from that?
Well, hopefully, the dollars that would come in from the county would benefit you in that regard and whatever else you want to do. But Lee County in general has a tremendous EMS system. And they have spent hours with the Holtec people and talking to the NRC about all the specifics of what an emergency response. I can't tell you all of them because most of them they won't talk about publicly because of what those possibilities may or may not be. But I would expect that there would be benefit to helping you with your EMS system.
I don't see it the way it's structured, but if you're John and you got a heart attack, you got 10 minutes left, and we gotta wait on Lovington to get here in 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
What I was looking at is the money that's being generated, plus the offshoot into the advanced reactor facilities, and also a recycling and repurposing facility that may take these cores back out of the Holtec facility, repurpose them. That's 3 different industries, nuclear footprint. New Mexico State has expressed very big interest in developing these other industries. You've addressed your one facility, so I don't want to get too far afield, but what I'm saying is for a little community like us, all that's great and fine, but really we need help. And I've looked at the money, I don't see how we get, money to get our ambulance going to get someone to the hospital with a heart attack.
Well, one of the things I would suggest, the ELEA Alliance, who will receive the direct dollars and represents the counties and the communities, we would expect that you would be at the table.
Okay.
And say, we want to participate in this, and I think that you and whoever else should get your fair share and have some good arguments about what you want out of the county money distribution. And so I would expect that we would want you at the table. And I've made that commitment in other places.
See, I haven't read that,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm missing.
Yeah.
I get all the public back and forth and the emotion and all that, but I wanted a place where we could plug in as a community. Our resolution really, it bolsters your national argument. You're going to Washington with it, that the whole community supports you. I get that, really, I do. I have a major in business, minor in economics, understand the packaging. What I was looking for is real connection, so not just a giveaway, hey, well, quid pro quo, I'm not looking for that. What I like is a connection to where we can earn money. We have a police department, and I don't know exactly how that fits into the overall security program, and things like that for operational upsets and contingency plans, because you can just be really freaked out if you know what the do are.
Yeah.
But if we plug into the alliance, is that where we plug into?
That's right.
So that's what we need to do.
That's the plug-in. And I think that we need to send an invitation to the mayor that she'll distribute to the council members, and
Are you aware of us, or is this the first time you're aware of us?
No, we've been aware of you.
Oh.
A very good friend of mine knows her son's wife comes from Tatum. So Tatum's been on my radar screen for years,
Good.
so.
Well, we're a small community, but we're a dynamic and diverse community, and there's a lot of talent here, and a lot of people are thinkers. We don't have a lot going on, we don't have a Walmart, so, you know, we
Sure.
have a lot of time, but you have really a lot of talent
Sure.
here, and we're kinda hitting up here. But I just was looking for that plug-in,
Yeah.
because I didn't see it. I see billions of dollars flowing through here, but I just didn't know how we could.
I think that's the plug-in.
Right, because we want to fight for
Yeah.
our ambulance service and our police and our fire department. And I know that you can package that and logistically tie that in. I'm looking for real input
Yeah.
for a return.
Well, the roads and the jobs too, you know, you said that the roads will improve if this goes through, and the jobs and the opportunity for our people, you know, as they graduate to maybe, you know, do something like that. I like
Maybe
that
it would
idea.
come back, yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, that answers my question. I appreciate that. But I would just say you guys did a great presentation, and your science is solid. I don't think people get to this stuff, there's no doubt. Anybody wants to argue, you can open it up, go to the can opener and grab it. I mean, I've been around, really, I think most of us in the oil field have seen some pretty powerful things out here, and it's secure. We don't have.
You use it every day.
Yeah. I think the argument though is that we get in New Mexico, and you're not from New Mexico, but you're from New Mexico.
Yeah.
We get left behind. And then you got Oxy and Phillips and Exxon and all, they make billions of dollars here. Yeah, we make good, you know, we make 100,000 a year working for them, but billions of dollars get extracted out of here, and we don't have an ambulance we can get to Lovington. And that's my concern
Yeah.
for our community. That's all I'm.
Very good argument. I don't disagree with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I appreciate your presentation.
Oh, yeah.
It was really good, so,
Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity.
and I know you guys have to get to Santa Fe, so they're.
New helicopter out here.
Be a late night, no. It's gonna be my little Honda.
And I did tell them after they gave their presentation, they could leave since they have to get on to Santa Fe, so we appreciate your.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna support the resolution. I'll just tell you that before you leave. You know, I've done a lot of research, and I don't see anything scientifically that's a problem. Everything's risky. We get hit by a meteor tomorrow, and I've been around here my whole life, and things are done well and right. Main thing is I want to make sure that all this money doesn't end up in Washington DC, and we still can't get John to the hospital out of here. And that's my biggest thing. What do we get? Because it's going to happen anyway. There's no doubt already. We already beat the Texas side as far as I can see.
Thank you, sir. I
See this
appreciate
gray hair, I have an appreciation for what you're saying.
Okay, me too. But I'll just let you know before y'all leave that I'm going to support that. I don't know if anybody else, but
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
you know.
Thank you, Mary.
But I look forward to looking how I can participate with ELEA. Holtec is probably is something that's partnered up with ELEA, but ELEA is my interest.
That's the,
Right.
there's no way two counties and two cities can run a nuclear project.
Right.
So we end up selling the
Contract,
property to
right.
them, but the deal is the incentive payment.
But I'd like to be at that table to
Well,
fight for
we-
Northern Lee County.
I would love for you to be there,
Okay.
and I'll make sure it happens,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
if I'm still alive.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming.
Thanks again.
And-
Thank you.
And we enjoyed your presentation, and I hope everybody else kind of has a little more understanding of what it's about, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks,
Safe
Jan.
travels.
Thank you.
Okay. Next,
25 questions.
next is resolution 0019-1819, interim storage facility for spent nuclear fuel in southeast eastern New Mexico.
Okay, on this, like I said, just for the record, the science to me and the research I've done is tight. Doesn't scare me at all. The biggest concern I see is that if we're not at the table with this project than our citizens in the south. And yeah, there'll be a good road, but we're gonna get a good road anyway, it's already in the state road budget. But we should, if you look at the money being involved there, just would hope that we participate with ELEA and make sure that we, you know, I'm not saying a handout, but that we're engaged in that because it's a national debate that's occurring. It's nationally engaged, so
Yeah, well, I've got to talk with John, and he's gonna be sure that we are notified and participate in it, so that we can.
Well, anybody got anything? I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 0019-1819 interim storage facility for spent nuclear fuel in southeastern New Mexico as written.
I'll second it, Kurt Stevens.
Okay, Guy,
Aye.
Paul, Kurt,
Aye.
and Arnold. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is resolution 0018-1819, grant agreement with the state of New Mexico. What this is they're wanting you to approve for me to sign the contract. We do have the contract for that $110,000 for the water tower. And all this resolution